I was 10 the first time I slept over at my best friend Eric's house. We were inseparable back then, always riding bikes together, trading comic books, daring each other to sneak into the woods after dark. But he was weirdly protective of his home life. Anytime I asked about going over, he'd dodge the question. My parents are strict, he'd say, or they don't like visitors. So when he finally invited me one Friday night, I nearly burst with excitement. The first thing I noticed walking up to his place was how wrong the house looked. From the street, it seemed normal enough. A neat two-story, white siding, shutters painted green. But the closer we got, the more off it felt. The windows were too tall, too narrow. The doorframe curved just slightly in the wrong way. And then there was a smell, a faint metallic tang in the air, like rust or blood. Eric's mom greeted us at the door. She smiled wide, too wide, showing teeth that seemed just a little too sharp. "You must be Daniel," she said. Her voice was melodic, but it had a strange vibration underneath, like two voices speaking at once. I mumbled a hello, and her eyes flicked over me, unblinking. They weren't the soft brown of Eric's. They were a pale, glassy gray, like stones at the bottom of a river. Eric's dad was sitting in the living room when we walked in. He didn't stand to shake my hand. He just looked up from his newspaper, his head tilting too far to the side, neck bending with a soft crack. "Welcome," he said. His smile was identical to his wife's. I told myself they were just eccentric. Some parents are like that. But the longer I stayed, the harder it was to believe. Dinner was the worst. Eric's mom set out plates of roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. It all looked normal. But when I took a bite, the meat tasted raw, the potatoes metallic, the beans bitter and slimy. I tried not to gag. Eric ate like it was the best thing in the world, eyes fixed on his parents. He didn't say much. None of us did. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of chewing. Wet, sucking noises that didn't match the food on the plates. When I glanced up, I swear his mom wasn't chewing at all, just holding the fork near her mouth, lips moving, throat bobbing, like something was sliding down her throat on its own. I told myself I was imagining it, until I looked at her plate again. Empty. I never saw her lift a fork once. Later that night, we set up our sleeping bags in Eric's room. I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself I was just spooked because it was new. We played video games until his mom knocked and said it was time to sleep. Her knuckles made a strange, hollow sound against the door, like bone tapping metal. When the house went quiet, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. That's when I heard it, a wet, slurping sound, coming from the walls. I thought maybe it was pipes, until Eric whispered, "Don't listen." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He turned toward me in the dark. His face was pale, his eyes wide. They don't like when people listen. I couldn't stay still. I needed water, an excuse to leave the room. I crept into the hallway, trying to stay quiet. The sound grew louder the farther I walked. Not just slurping now, gnashing, tearing, like something eating. I followed it to the kitchen. The door was cracked open, a strip of light spilling into the hall. And inside I saw them, Eric's mom and dad, crouched over something on the counter. Their jaws were unhinged, mouths stretched wider than humanly possible, skin rippling as it shifted. Their teeth weren't teeth anymore, but rows of sharp, needle-like spines. They were feeding on something raw, something moving. I didn't realize I'd made a sound until they both stopped. Slowly, in perfect unison, their heads turned toward the door, and their voices, both of them layered together, whispered one word, "Daniel." I ran. I didn't even think about being quiet. I bolted back down the hall, heart hammering so loud I could barely hear my own footsteps. Eric's room was at the end, and I threw myself inside, slamming the door. Eric sat up in his sleeping bag, his face pale in the glow of the nightlight. "You looked," he whispered. They're not." I couldn't even get the words out. My chest heaved. Eric shook his head, almost sadly. "I told you not to." The floor creaked outside the door. Slow, deliberate steps. A shadow shifted under crack. "Daniel." The voices whispered again, overlapping, inhuman. The doorknob rattled. Not turning, just testing. Eric crawled closer to me, his eyes wide with fear, but not surprise. They won't hurt you. Not yet. They just want to know you. What the hell are they? I hissed. His lip trembled. They're my parents. The doorknob stopped rattling. Silence pressed against the door. Then, after a long moment, the voices murmured, "Sleep well, boys." Their footsteps retreated down the hall. I didn't sleep. I sat there shaking, staring at the door, waiting for it to open again. At some point, exhaustion pulled me under. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the blinds. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare. The house smelled of pancakes, syrup, and coffee. Eric yawned, stretching like nothing was wrong. "Come on," he said. "Breakfast." I didn't want to go, but I couldn't just stay in the room. We sat at the table, his mom setting down plates stacked high with pancakes. His dad sipped coffee from a mug. They looked normal. Too normal. "Sleep well, Daniel?" his mom asked. Her smile stretched wide, teeth too sharp in the morning light. I forced a nod. Her eyes flicked to Eric, then back to me. "Good. We're glad you came." I pushed the pancakes around on my plate, not daring to eat. The smell was off, sweet at first, but underneath it lingered that same metallic tang. Eric's dad folded his newspaper, watching me with those pale gray eyes. "You'll come back, won't you? It's important that you do." My throat tightened. I muttered something about my mom expecting me home early. They didn't protest. But as I stood to leave, Eric's mom placed a hand on my shoulder. Her skin was ice cold, her grip too strong. "Next time," she whispered, "don't peek." I ran home and never told anyone what I'd seen. Who would believe me? A 10-year-old kid claiming his best friend's parents weren't human? I tried to avoid Eric after that. I made excuses, drifted away. He never asked me over again. But sometimes I'd catch him watching me from across the playground, his face unreadable. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear a noise outside my window. A wet, slurping sound, like something feeding. Years later, I learned the truth. Eric didn't move away like everyone said. His family didn't just disappear. The house with the green shutters is still there, still lived in, but it's not the same anymore. It's waiting. And sometimes when I drive past, I see faces in the window, smiling, watching. Story 2. I saw them eating in the dark. By the time I was 16, I had learned how to ignore the things I didn't want to believe. Take my best friend, Kevin. We'd been tight since middle school, but I never liked being at his house. Something about it unsettled me, though I could never put my finger on what. The air always smelled faintly of copper, like pennies soaked in water, and his parents, they smiled too much, not friendly smiles. The kind that stretched their faces tight, as though they were trying to imitate something they didn't really understand. I told myself it was just me being paranoid, until the night I saw them eating in the dark. Kevin and I had been playing video games in his basement, the kind of late-night marathon where you lose track of time. Around 1 in the morning, we finally shut everything off. Kevin went upstairs to grab sodas while I lingered behind, scrolling through my phone. That's when I heard it, a low, wet tearing sound, followed by a rhythmic crunch. At first, I thought it was a TV still running, but the screen was black. The sound was coming from upstairs. Curiosity overrode common sense. I crept up the basement steps, careful not to let them creak. The kitchen light was off, but through the crack of the door I saw them, Kevin's mom and dad, sitting at the table in total darkness. Their faces leaned over something I couldn't quite see. Their jaws moved in strange, jerking motions, tearing, gnashing. Their spines curved in impossible angles, shoulders twitching with every bite. The sound of it was wet and horrible, like meat being ripped apart by hand. I thought I saw something glisten in the faint glow of the microwave clock. Red, dripping. I held my breath, frozen. Then Kevin's dad stopped mid-bite. Slowly, his head turned toward the doorway. His pale eyes glowed faintly in the dark. I bolted back down the steps, pretending I'd never left. I snatched up my controller, heart pounding, trying to look casual. Kevin returned a minute later with the sodas. His face was pale, his smile strained. "You didn't go upstairs, did you?" he asked quietly. I lied through my teeth. "No." "Why?" He didn't answer. He just handed me a soda, his hands trembling. We didn't play anymore. We just sat there, sipping our drinks, the silence between us too heavy to break. When I finally went home the next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What had they been eating? Why in the dark? I tried to convince myself it had been normal, steak, ribs, anything, but the memory of those wet, tearing sounds wouldn't leave my head. Neither would the way his father's eyes had glowed. That weekend, Kevin invited me over again. I said no. His reply was immediate. "You saw it, didn't you?" I froze, staring at the screen. My fingers hovered, unsure how to respond. Before I could type anything, another message appeared. "They know you saw." I didn't answer Kevin's text. I couldn't. My hand shook too hard, and my brain kept looping that single phrase. "They know you saw." The next 2 days, I avoided him at school, pretended to be busy, pretended not to hear when he called after me in the hallway. But one night, he showed up at my house. I woke to the sound of pebbles hitting my window. When I peeked outside, Kevin stood in the yard, his face pale under the street lamp. "Let me in," he whispered. I should have pretended to sleep, but something in his voice, desperation, fear, made me push open the window. We sat on the floor of my room, talking in hushed tones. "They're not like us," he said, his hands twisted in his lap. "I don't even think they're really my parents." "What are they?" I asked. Kevin's eyes darted to the window, then back to me. "I don't know, but they're not human, and they're always hungry." The memory of the kitchen came rushing back. The sounds, the tearing, the glow of his father's eyes. What were they eating? Kevin swallowed hard. "I don't want to tell you." For weeks, I tried to distance myself, but Kevin kept showing up. At school, at my house. Always pale, always terrified. "They're watching you now, too," he whispered once in the cafeteria. That night, I woke to the sound of tapping at my window. But it wasn't pebbles this time. It was long, bony fingers, curled against the glass. I screamed. By the time my parents came rushing in, the window was empty. No sign of anyone outside. I told myself it was a nightmare, until the next morning, when I found something stuck to the window frame. A scrap of fabric. Green plaid. The same shirt Kevin's father always wore. I tried to avoid Kevin altogether after that. But avoiding his parents was harder. One night, my mom sent me to drop off a textbook Kevin had left at our house. I begged her not to make me, but she just frowned, confused by my sudden reluctance. So I walked up their front steps, clutching the book like a shield. The house was dark. No lights on, no TV flickering. But the door creaked open before I could knock. Kevin's mom stood there, smiling too wide. Her teeth gleamed in the dim porch light. "We've been expecting you," she said. Her hand shot out, faster than it should have been, curling tight around my wrist. Her skin was cold, her nails sharp. I dropped the book in panic, stumbling back. Somehow, I tore free and ran all the way home without looking back. The next day, Kevin was gone, his locker emptied, his desk bare. When I asked the teacher, they just said, "The family moved suddenly." But that night, lying in bed, I heard it, the wet, gnashing sound, coming from the walls. And when I looked toward my window, I saw them, Kevin's parents, standing in the yard, smiling. I don't go near that side of town anymore. I don't answer the knocks at my door after midnight, but sometimes I hear it anyway. The tearing, the crunching, and sometimes when I close my eyes, I see Kevin's face. Not the way he looked at school, the way he looked at the end. Half shadow, half something else. Hungry. Story 3. They wanted me to join their family. When I was 19, I ran into Sarah again. We hadn't spoken in years. She'd been my best friend in elementary school, the kind of friend you swear you'll never lose touch with, until life pulls you in different directions. Seeing her in the grocery store felt surreal, like finding a piece of my childhood hidden in plain sight. She smiled, warm and familiar, and insisted we catch up. I should have been happy. But when she mentioned her parents, I felt a chill. I remembered them. Too pale, too still. Their strange eyes, their too wide grins. Even as a kid, something about them had set my instincts screaming. But Sarah brushed it off like it was nothing. "They'd love to see you again," she said. "You should come over for dinner sometime, for old time's sake." I told her I'd think about it, but her smile didn't waver. "Don't think too long. They'll be excited." For days, I tried to put it out of my mind, but Sarah kept texting, reminding me, pressing. Finally, curiosity and guilt wore me down. I told myself it would be fine. I was older now, rational. Maybe I'd imagined the strangeness as a child. The night I went over, the house looked almost exactly as I remembered. Too perfect, like a picture in a magazine. But under the porch light, the paint seemed to ripple, as though the wood beneath was breathing. Sarah greeted me with a hug. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes still had that same sparkle. "They're waiting," she said, tugging me inside. The smell hit me first. Metallic, sweet and sour at the same time. It clung to the back of my throat, making it hard to swallow. Her parents were in the dining room. They hadn't aged a day. Her mother's eyes gleamed with the same glassy gray shine. Her father's smile was stretched too wide, lips straining against skin. "Daniel," her mom said, "we're so glad you came back." Dinner was laid out on the table. Roasted meat, vegetables, bread. It all looked normal, but the smell made my stomach twist. I forced myself to sit. Sarah's parents didn't eat much. They just watched me. "Do you remember us?" her dad asked. His voice was smooth, but underneath it was a low vibration, like two people speaking at once. I nodded stiffly. "Good," he said. "That means you'll remember what we told you." My fork froze halfway in my mouth. "What do you mean?" Sarah's mom leaned closer. Her breath was cold against my cheek. "That one day, you would join our family." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. Funny, no one else laughed. Sarah stared at me with a strange expression, something between pity and hunger. Her father's smile widened. His teeth looked too sharp in the candlelight. "It's time," he said simply. I pushed back my chair, my pulse spiking. I should go. But Sarah grabbed my wrist. Her fingers dug in with unnatural strength. "Don't," she whispered. Her eyes met mine. And for the first time, I realized they weren't the same eyes I remembered. They were gray, glassy, just like theirs. I tried to pull my wrist free, but Sarah's grip was iron. Her nails dug into my skin hard enough to draw blood. Her parents leaned forward in perfect unison, their pale faces glowing in the candlelight. "It has begun," her father whispered. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded, my voice breaking. Sarah's mother tilted her head, her smile too wide. "You've been chosen, Daniel. You always were." I shoved the chair back and stumbled to my feet. The whole house seemed to shift around me, the wallpaper pulsing, the floorboards bending like ribs. Sarah stood too, still holding my wrist. Her face flickered between familiar and alien, her features stretching in ways skin shouldn't move. "You promised when we were kids," she said softly. "You said you'd always be there for me. Always. You don't break promises to family." I yanked free and bolted for the door. My legs carried me faster than I thought possible, fueled by raw terror. But when I reached the front hall, the door wasn't where it should have been. The walls stretched on, endless, covered in the same wallpaper that seemed to breathe. Behind me, I heard them rising from the table. Footsteps that weren't footsteps, more like dragging, slithering claws on wood. Daniel. Their voices overlapped, 3 layers now for filling the house. "You belong with us." I ran blindly through the twisting halls until I found myself back in the dining room. The table was gone. The chairs too. Only Sarah stood there. Her skin was pale and translucent, veins visible beneath. Her eyes glowed with that same glassy gray, inhuman light. "Don't fight it," she whispered. "It's easier if you don't fight." Her mouth opened too wide, too far. Her jaw unhinged with a crack, revealing rows of thin, needle teeth. I screamed, And that's when her parents came. They emerged from the shadows of the room, their bodies no longer holding human shape, limbs bent at impossible angles, skin stretched thin, mouths splitting wider and wider until they nearly split their heads in half. The smell hit me again. Copper, rot, hunger. They closed in, their voices merging into a single chorus. Join us, join us, join us. Something in my head began to slip, like they were pulling at the edges of my thoughts, unraveling me thread by thread. I dropped to my knees, clutching my skull, screaming for it to stop. And then, silence. I opened my eyes. I was outside, on the street. The house stood behind me, dark and still, not breathing, not pulsing, just a normal, quiet house. My legs shook so badly I could barely stand. I stumbled home, half expecting them to drag me back at any second. But they didn't. I never saw Sarah again. When I tried to ask around, neighbors said the family had moved, vanished overnight. No forwarding address. But the house never sold. It just sat there, empty. Or at least, that's what people think. I know better. Because sometimes when I drive past late at night, I see lights flicker on inside. And sometimes when the air is still, I hear voices from the yard. Daniel, calling me home.